Hello, and welcome to another part in my Making a Sword Battleground series. The goal of this series is to make a PvP arena game where you use styles to fight players. Those styles are based off of characters from various media, such as video games, cartoons, and anime. In this video, we'll be finishing the moveset, touching up on the things we made in the previous video, as well as some random but important things that I made in between the previous video and now. If you are looking forward to future parts of this series, please make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell. And without any further ado, let's get right onto the video. In the first part of this series, we began making the basic character. We added the M1s for the character, their first move, the slash, and their third move, the 360 spin. And before we start working on the moves, probably need to do some review, as you're likely either a new viewer or forgotten since it's been 3 weeks since my previous video. So the second move, leap, is basically just the player leaping into the air. They draw their blade and then they slam down into the ground, knocking back anybody in the general vicinity of the attack. And for the fourth and final move, it's a simple swing forward that launches a projectile ahead of the player. I began as I always do, which is making an animation, and I opted for making 3 animations for the leap start, middle, and end. And you may say, why didn't you just make it one long animation and use events to cue the code? So when it reaches the middle of the animation, use the event, fire the event, and then tell the code to do something. The reason is I didn't feel like it. Sometimes I prefer doing it like that. Sometimes I prefer doing it when the animation ends. It's all really convenience sake. I just at the time felt like doing the 3 separate animations. It just felt easier to organize for me, but in the future it's probably smarter to just make it one long animation. Felt pretty good about how the animations turned out, and once they were finished I was able to finally start scripting. So with the move, I want the player to be able to control where they land while they're launching themselves into the air. So lerping, which was my initial idea, wasn't going to work out. However, I did stumble across Vector Force, and after looking through a few dev forums, I was able to make the player fly. Literally. After fixing that bug and some others regarding using tween and vector force and blah blah blah, I was able to get the player to go into the air and then fall down. The jump looked pretty uninspired and lacks impact upon reaching the peak of the jump, so I made it so that the player falls down and plays the slam animation. And soon after, I was able to start spawning a hitbox wherever the player landed, and I was able to use that hitbox to detect any players that were inside of it, make them take damage one time, and then also knock them back. And with that finished, I only touched up on the animations and the sound length times a little bit before I was able to finally move on to the last move, the projectile. And as I mentioned previously, I began working on the animation. And as I was working on the animation, I realized I made a big mistake. Now the slash move, I want it to be something that's kind of short in startup, a little reactable but not too reactable, and something that you can block, just something that's not easily punished because the end lag is low. Now the leap attack guard breaks, and it has startup enough to you can see the move and you can react to it, but its radius is relatively big, and so it's its damage to compensate for the fact it has a heavy-handed end lag. And for the 360 spin, I want it to be something that you can guard break your opponent, catch them off guard if they're turtling for too long, and also something that can be used at the end of a combo to make it spicier and do more damage. If you haven't noticed already, not a single move is a combo extender, so you're just going to be doing M1s in the 360 spin, and then that's the only thing you can do. Maybe M1s in the slash, but that doesn't really sound too fun. So I need to make this last move an extender. But how do I accomplish this? So I came up with the idea, what if I made the slash portion of the projectile attack actually have its own hitbox, so that would stun the player. And then a projectile would spawn, which would also stun the player. And with the combination of those two hit stuns, the player would be stunned for long enough so that the M1s will reset and you'll be able to do an additional 4 more M1 attacks into whatever else you want to throw at the end of the combo. This sounds more complicated than it really is, when in all honesty it's basically just putting 2 moves in 1 move. After deciding what I wanted the project to do and animating the attack, I went ahead and started scripting the animations. And I must say, not only was scripting animations extremely easy, but making animations was probably the easiest thus far in this entire project. Once the attack actually created a hitbox, all I had to do from at that point was add an event in the animation and tell the code that's when I want the hitbox to actually be created. And before moving on to the most difficult part of the attack, and possibly the most difficult part of this project, I decided to take a little bit of a break and do some important things that I've been putting off for a while. So the main issue with my code is I decided to make a table, and with the table it holds all of the player hit stuns while at the same time clearing the table when the attack finishes, meaning the server doesn't really hold any specific player stuns. So if, for example, Johnny hits player A with an attack, if another player tries to hit Johnny, then that player will not be able to hit Johnny because they're in the player hit stuns table, and won't be able to hit Johnny until they are removed from that table. While this is a relatively short period of time, I really need to fix that. Now, I had 2 options. I could use a meta table to store the player's data in that, or I could use dictionaries to store the player's data in there. And because a meta table tutorial has failed to not put me to sleep in 5 minutes, I decided to go with dictionaries. This process honestly wasn't too difficult to implement, it just took a little bit of time. I simply have the player get added to the dictionary whenever they spawn in. This is so that I can grab that player's name anytime they hit someone or get hit and add them to a table in the dictionary. And then I started to work on my projectile attack again, and then I realized I made another grave mistake, and that was I'm not checking to see if the player is attacking or not. Well, I thought I was, but I wasn't. And again, with a lot of trial and error, I was able to successfully get it working. And once that was done, I was finally able to start working on the projectile. I started off by making it so once the attack happens, the projectile gets created at the player's location, and then from there I would be able to start scripting the actual projectile script. Now for the projectile movement, I could have easily just used fast cast, but I wanted to kind of get an understanding of how to make projectiles myself. So I followed this tutorial on YouTube, which kind of explained things well, and I already had a background in physics, so it wasn't like he taught me anything I didn't already know regarding physics, just how to implement it into Roblox. And it took a lot of debugging, but eventually I was able to work out the raycast for the projectile. And if you don't know what raycasting is, imagine a laser, and you tell the laser where it should start at, the distance it should travel, and the things it should ignore or include. Now all I had to do was set the position of the projectile or laser to the raycast. Now I opted for looping through some specified numbers to add the attachments at the positions that I told it to on the slash effect. Now this is significantly more complicated than the initial idea I had, which was to just add the attachments in the toolbox. So I'm probably going to be doing that idea in between this part and the next one. Sometime in the middle of all that, I decided to make a enemy behavior script. It's very small. Basically, the enemy moves from one side of the map to the other, and they just kind of go back and forth. And also, whenever they're hit, their head turns red, very red. And it's just an easy way for me to test Hitstun without having to make it insanely high and adding another player into the project. It's touched up on as well, like the slash hitbox, M1's hitboxes, and the leap effect hitbox as well. But this video has gone on long enough, so let's just start trying to wrap it up. Okay, and now I will showcase all of the attacks that I made so far in the series. So first off with the M1s, I'll try to go as slow as possible. And one more time. Right. Now the slash attack, large radius, you can see. Probably right there too, yep. And boom. The second move is the leap attack. Start up, come down. I could probably reach him from here if I... Yep. Brody's about to die, but the third move is the 360 sword spin. Oops. The third move is the 360 sword spin. Decent range. I removed the hitbox temporarily, but yeah. And of course it hits up close, but it depends on where you're facing. You see, it doesn't hit until like way later if I'm not facing him when I do the attack. So that's kind of important. And then the last move is the projectile slash. It says a projectile forward. I'm gonna get rid of that rate cast. That was just for demonstration purposes, but you can see. And also, I want to demonstrate that the person can get hit twice. You can hear the hitbox. You can even hear them get hit twice. Right. But yeah, those are all the moves I've made thus far. All right, and for the last segment of this video, I'll be showcasing the combo that I made. Right. So the combo is 4 on ones, then a projectile slash, then 4 more on ones, and then the 360 spin. So let's see what that looks like. Also, I want to remind you, when the enemy is hit, their head turns red, and when the combo stops being true, no stun plays. So if you see this play, that means I messed up somewhere in the combo. So let's see. As you see, it did not play until the enemy got knocked back. Awesome. So that is a true combo. I wonder, is there a way for me to grab his HP really fast? Okay, I found it. So 62, so that is 38 damage. Not a bad combo at all. I must say, I'm actually quite happy with how that turns out. And that is all for the second part of the Sword Battleground series. In the third part, I'm planning to add dashes, leaning, so when you're moving to the left, you lean to the left, right, you lean to the right, and also blocking slash guard breaks. I also want to try to get one of my friends to 1v1 me with that combat system in place and see what changes that need to be made still to make the game feel polished. Please leave your character recommendations in the comment section below. What characters do you want me to add? Remember, they could be an anime character, a video game character, a cartoon character. As long as they use a blade slash sword, they definitely have potential to be added. Also, please like and subscribe to support this series. I'm hoping to get this out within 2 days so that this video only takes 3 weeks. Hopefully the next part of this series doesn't take nearly as long. And yeah, without any further ado, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.